Tech in 20 with CATT Northwest, Season 1, Episode 4, Setting Up Desmos for Low Vision Success.
CATT, Center for Assistive Technology Training Northwest.
Good morning again, everybody, and welcome to Tech in 20. Today's topic is how to set up Desmos for low vision access. Your host this morning is going to be the queen of extension activities, CATT Northwest trainer, Leslie Edmonds. Okay, Leslie, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. So I'm going to kind of continue on with getting our students set up for Desmos. So we're going to be talking about some more advanced topics as we go along in Tech in 20, but we're still at that point where we're getting our students set for Desmos. So today I wanted to talk about setting up our students with low vision and some of the ways that we can do that. So in the chat, I have kind of a lesson plan like I had last time, just in case you need that little start to get you going. Because sometimes our students get a little nervous when they have a new software program, or even teachers if you haven't been on Desmo before. So think of this as just kind of a little cheat sheet with a lesson plan in it. And within the document, I just put down some learning objectives and just some background activities in case you haven't used Desmos before. For teachers, just learning about Desmos a little bit in case you're at that level. But today I wanted to talk about just 4 settings to do with our students with low vision. And I am sharing my screen, and I have on the screen the Desmos graphing calculator. So the website for that is www.desmos.com/calculator. And I brought up the graphing calculator because there are some settings on here that I really wanted to show you that are important to our students with low vision. So in the lesson plan I start off with step 1, having our student identify the wrench. And the wrench is really kind of like the gateway, the control to the control panel in Desmos. And it's in the top right corner. But just remember that if our students are having difficulty finding that little tiny wrench as a low vision student in the top right corner, that they can always do Control+ to zoom in. If they're not on Zoom text or just need to zoom in on the screen to find that wrench, that they can do Control+ to zoom in, Control- to zoom out. And I always like to do a little reminder of some helpful commands that we can give to our students. Command Z, undo. Love to just reinforce that whatever you do can be undone. So I asked the student to get to the wrench and just to find it and to go ahead and open that up, because it really is like the control panel. And there's some really nice features on here from Desmos. I just love Desmos and their attention to detail. So step 1 is finding the wrench, making sure that the student can independently get to that control box, to that menu of settings. And on there at the top are 2 letter A's. There's a smaller letter A and a bigger letter A. And I love to go over students with that, if you try these settings, you can enlarge not just the font, but the numbers and the graph. And it's really great for them to be able to choose what they would like, whether they would like it to be just the normal size or enlarging. And it's just that letter A, and letting the students know that, this is kind of a universal symbol that they might see on a website. In the top right corner, it's often a lower letter A and a large letter A to enlarge what's on the screen. So just, again, this is kind of beginner settings for our students, but it's really important as well. So another thing I have on here is to do the reverse contrast. So within this menu, reverse contrast is just a check mark. And it's my favorite setting. I just think everything pops on here. So having the student play around with the font size and our reverse contrast, just getting them used to Desmos and that they do have some freedom to set up the screen what is best for them. What is best for them? I personally like reverse contrast, but of course, it's all about our students. Another setting I want to go over with my student and, just to show them that there's different options on here. Under grid, so the second option on the menu, under the wrench menu, is grid. And there's a check mark where you can get rid of the grid lines. But a really nice feature on here is called minor grid lines. And if you take away that check mark, those smaller grid lines disappear. And I just find a lot of my low vision students prefer to have those minor grid lines go away. Of course, it's up to the student, but again, just have them play around with these settings because Desmos does such a good job of giving you options and just have them play around. Have the grid lines, don't have the grid lines, reverse contrast. What is going to be their preference? And also that they can do this independently. They can get these settings done. So if they're taking a test or anything, they can get in there, just get these settings all hooked up. So I'm going to go away from the wrench for a minute. I'm going to put back my minor grid lines. And I wanted to show you another feature that is very important to our students with low vision. So in our expression box over here on the left-hand side of the screen is the expression box. And we learned about that last time. And if we put in an expression, I'm going to do y plus x equals 2 correctly, hopefully. And it comes up with a graph line. And what's nice about Desmos is that you can increase the size of that graph line. And so I'm hitting the, what would that be? There's that symbol's called something up there, and I can't think of what it is. But if I click on the circle next to the expression, it gives me the options for the lines. So I can get rid of the line, but I can also make it bigger. There's two lines here. There's two options. One is the opacity, and that's can be either 1 or 2, transparency, and then line thickness. And I'm just going to put 8 because I have a student who prefers 8, and it's a nice thick line. So you can have your student play around with the thickness of the lines as well as different colors. They might want that bold black color. They might want something that pops a little more. But again, work with your student and see what they want to do. What is their preference on there? So I love that option. And finally, the best part. We have on here the ability to hear a line, hear the graph. And I think that's just such a wonderful option from Desmos. So when we come to our expression box, we can go in and I switched over to a Mac, so I have to make sure I have the right command. If you hit Option T, you're going to come up with a menu, some options at the bottom of the screen. And it's really to hear the graph. And I'm going to push that for you. So it's really great for our students to hear that this graph is falling, to hear that audio of what's going on the screen. So I'm going to play that again. And of course, the audio will change depending on what is on the screen, whether it's going up, going down, in a curve. And you can turn off, get rid of this and not have them hear it, but there are shortcut commands to it, and Option T or Command T on Windows, and then hitting the letter H standing for here. And if I want to get rid of this, because it does take up a little bit of real estate at the bottom of the screen, I can just hit audio trace off and it'll go away. But it's really a great option. So I'm going to do it again, Option T, and then I'm going to hit the letter H and hear that. And again, there's so many lessons that can move forward with the audio portion that they provide from Desmos, but this is just introducing your student to options that they can do and hopefully do independently. And hearing that graph is really a great activity. And just spend some time having them set it up. I have on the lesson plan just to check marks to do it. Opening Desmos, clicking the wrench, making that line thicker, trying reverse contrast, and then typing in an expression, listening to it. One thing I also have within the lesson plan is that, we want to have a self-advocacy script. So something we want our students to do is to advocate for themselves and say that they need these settings. So I just have a script in there, an example that you can go over with your student to say, hey, I need certain settings, and reverse contrast really works for me, and I'd really like to have that, and I need it. And just reinforcing that advocacy to get those settings done. So that's all I have for that. I'd love for you guys to check out the lesson plan, see what you think about it. It's really just kind of an intro for our students, intro for teachers who may not know too much about Desmos and are just starting off with it, and just some of the settings for our low vision students, and going through them, working towards our students being independent in this area. And I finished a little quick. Anybody have any questions? I'll check the chat. Oh, lesson plan link again. Ting got that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to hear the audio on my Mac, it's Option T, and on Windows, it's Alt T. I might have misspoken before. It's Alt T, and then you can hit the letter H. So that's your keyboard command for that. And also, one other little hint is if your student is having trouble finding that wrench in the top right corner, you can also do Control Command G, and that's the keyboard setting to get to that menu. And I have that in the lesson plan as well, under just some helpful keyboard commands to go over with your student. So Control Command G will open and close that graph setting menus where we find reverse contrast and hiding the grid lines. I just am so impressed. I remain impressed with Desmos and how easy it is to change settings. I feel like writing them a little email and just saying thank you for making it so easy, and having those keyboard commands as well. Because sometimes finding that little wrench in the corner, we don't want our students to be frustrated as soon as they are learning a new software program. We want them to have confidence, and having those keyboard commands as a backup are really great. And it's Desmos, you're listening, and thank you. So any other questions? Anything? And Ting, chime in if you think that there's something else. I'm going to stop my share.
And Yes, just letting everybody know that the link to the lesson plan is on the Tech in 20 training schedule. So let me put that link in the chat again for everybody. And for anybody watching the recording, access to the training schedule is available upon registration for Tech in 20. So there's that link to the training schedule.
And I hope that the lesson plan is helpful. I I do it because not everyone is familiar with Desmos, and sometimes just getting going with a student, it, it's like you don't want to bombard them with something new. It's a new program, and we're going to do these settings, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. And as a teacher, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And so just having that little cheat sheet, that little lesson plan as a guide, because sometimes I forget that I want to go over some commands with them first, or I want to give them a little background on why I'm doing it instead of just telling them to do it, the hows and the whys. So I did put it out there, and it's a little bit detailed, but I hope it's a useful tool for you, because as I get older, I forget a little bit more. And so maybe it's just for me, and I'm just sharing it with you. So.
And Leslie, we have two questions. Question
Mhm.
one, can you talk a little bit about how the key commands differ when people are on a Mac versus a PC?
Yeah, they're really very similar, and mostly it's Option on the Mac. It's hitting Option as opposed to Alt. So that's the biggest change. So Desmos does have a really great cheat sheet on their website that does have the Windows command as well as the Mac commands. And like this morning, I just switched over from my Windows device to my Mac, and I couldn't remember. And I was like, oh yeah, just Option in the same letter. So it really is quite similar. On the Mac, it's usually Option versus Alt, and command will be the same. I hope that answers your question.
And then there's another question about using Desmos with the low vision features alone, or would you use this in conjunction with Zoom text?
So that's a really good question. And I just tried it with Zoom text yesterday. I have had students with using it with Zoom text. And personal opinion as a TVI, I feel that Desmos can stand alone. I feel like with Zoom text, it just zooms in too much, and it's a little bit harder to find the menu or find where you are on the graph. I feel that there's enough on Desmos alone to give access to the student. Of course, it's the preference of the student. They may be a whiz with Zoom text and can use it in conjunction, but I find it to kind of take away from the clarity of what Desmos on its own provides, if that makes sense. Of course, I would try both with your student, because it's up to it doesn't matter what I think, it's what the student needs. But I do find you lose some of the clarity using Zoom text. Just experience from my experience.
Yeah, and I also think for a lot of low vision kids, introducing them to those low vision tools that are built into a program is a really great way to facilitate that low vision access without having something bigger like Zoom text installed.
Yeah, just
Yep.
being more independent by just using the Zoom text tool. I mean, excuse me, using the Desmos tools.
All right. Well, Leslie, that is the end of our Tech in 20 today. Thank you, everyone, for taking a pause out of your day. So next week, join us to learn about how to set up Desmos to work with JAWS. And that's it for today. That's it for Tech in 20, where we meow at your tech needs.
That's so
Okay,
cute.
I'm going to start the recording now.
The contents of this video were developed through a partnership with the American Printing House of the Blind, APH. CATT-NW is based at the Washington State School for the Blind, WSSB. Logos, WSSB and APH. The contents of this video were developed under a contract authorized by the Department of Education. However, these contents do not necessarily represent the policy of the Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government.